Okay, let's jump right in. 451.5 million US dollars. And that's the projection for the global market, just for turning old tires into fuel for next year, 2025.
It's pretty staggering when you put it like that, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you think a market that size basically built on something we used to just, throw away.
Exactly. And it signals, I think, a bigger shift. It's not just some small recycling thing anymore. We're looking at a major environmental problem, those mountains of tires, and seeing it as a valuable energy resource.
Right. It's about sustainability.
Definitely. The demand for sustainable solutions is pushing this forward.
So, welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today, we are digging into tire derived fuel TDF, basically giving old tires a second life as fuel.
And it's really gaining traction. As you said, it's not a fringe concept these days.
Not at all. And to really get our heads around this, we've been looking closely at a report from Cognitive Market Research. It's their Tire Derived Fuel Market Report 2025, the global edition.
Yeah, it's quite comprehensive. It gives a really detailed picture of where things stand now and where they're likely headed.
So, our mission here today is pretty straightforward. Pull out the key insights for you, cut through the dense data, and give you those, aha moments.
Think of it as the shortcut to understanding this whole TDF landscape. We'll cover the big players, the growth drivers, how it differs region by region.
Right. What's the big picture? Let's get into it.
Okay, so globally, that $451.5 million figure for 2025, that's just the start. The report sees it climbing to almost $581 million, $580.89 million to be precise by 2033.
Wow. Okay. And what's the growth rate on that?
It's looking at a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of about 3.20%. Pretty steady, consistent growth.
Which really points to the drivers you mentioned earlier, right? Managing waste tires better and needing sustainable energy.
Exactly. Those two forces are really converging here. Environmental pressure meets practical energy needs.
But it's not happening the same everywhere, you mentioned.
No, definitely not. The regional picture is quite varied. Take North America, for instance.
Okay, North America, what's the story there?
Well, according to the report, they're the biggest market right now. Over 40% of the global revenue comes from there.
40%. So what's the dollar figure?
For 2025, it's estimated at roughly $131 million, $130.94 million.
Okay, the current leader. But what about growth?
Their growth is projected at 2.3% annually through 2033. Solid, but maybe a bit more measured compared to some other places we'll talk about.
And within North America, the U.S. is obviously the giant there.
It is. The U.S. market is projected at about $103 million for 2025, growing slightly slower at 2.1%. Canada and Mexico actually show slightly higher séchageurs, around 3.1% and 2.8% respectively.
Interesting. So why is North America leading now? What's driving it there?
It seems to be a mix. There's a strong demand for sustainable energy, definitely. Plus, you have stricter environmental rules about waste disposal.
And government incentives probably play a role.
Yeah, the report mentions government incentives and those regulations really pushing things along.
Makes sense. Okay, moving across the Atlantic, what about Europe?
Europe's the second biggest player. They account for just over 30% of the global revenue.
So, still a major chunk.
Absolutely. Their market size for 2025 is estimated at around $108 million, $108.36 million, with a projected KGR pretty similar to North America's, about 2.1%.
And within Europe, any standout countries?
Germany's a big one, projected at nearly $21.5 million in 2025, with 2.3% growth. The UK is close behind in size, around $18 million, but with slightly faster growth expected at 2.9%.
Okay. And others like France, Italy.
Yeah, France, Italy, Spain, Russia, they're all significant markets, but their growth rates vary a bit. Like France is around 1.3%, while Russia is lower at 1.1%. Interestingly, Luxembourg, though small, is projected at 2.4% growth.
So what's the European story? Similar drivers to North America. Regulations again?
Very much so. Europe
Yeah.
has a strong commitment to sustainability baked into policy. Strict rules are a big factor.
And the fuel itself.
Right, the high energy content of TDF makes it attractive. Plus, Europe generally has a pretty established tire recycling infrastructure already in place. And, like everywhere, rising energy costs don't hurt TDF's case.
Okay, that covers the two biggest markets currently. Now, you mentioned some regions are growing faster. Let's talk Asia Pacific.
Right, APAC. This is where things get really dynamic. Their current market share is about 23%, with the 2025 size projected at $167 million.
Wait, $167 million. That's actually bigger than North America or Europe for 2025.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
a key point. Even though their current share is lower, their projected size for next year is the largest, and the growth rate is the kicker.
What is it?
A CAGR of 4.5% through 2033. That's the fastest globally.
Wow. Okay, so who's driving that rapid growth in APAC?
Well, China is the biggest market within APAC right now, about $70 million in 2025, going at 4.0%. But the real standout for growth is India.
India. What are their numbers?
Projected market of around $16.7 million in 2025, but with a huge CAGR of 6.4%. That's the fastest major market growth anywhere.
6.4%. That's massive. Japan, South Korea?
Also big players. Japan around $23 million, South Korea $20 million, with solid growth rates too, 3.0% and 3.6% respectively.
So what's fueling this boom in APAC? Is it just industrial demand?
That's a big part of it, yeah. Industrial activity is surging, so they need cost-effective energy. TDF fits. But it's also a growing focus on waste management.
Like dealing with all the old tires?
Exactly. Regulatory pressure is increasing there too. Plus, the car market is expanding rapidly in many APAC countries, so the supply of end-of-life tires is just huge.
Okay, so APAC is definitely the region to watch for growth. What about South America?
South America accounts for just over 5% of the global revenue. Their 2025 market size is projected at about $17 million, $17.16 million.
And growth.
Pretty strong, actually. A CAGR of 3.9% expected through 2033.
Who leads there? Brazil?
Brazil, yeah, is the largest market, around $7.3 million with 4.5% growth. And Argentina is showing even faster growth, 4.8%, though its market size is smaller, closer to $3 million.
And the drivers. Similar story. Environmental concerns, industrial growth.
Pretty much the same themes we're seeing elsewhere, yes.
Yeah.
Growing environmental awareness, industrial needs, stricter waste rules coming in, and, of course, the availability of lots of scrap tires.
Got it. Let's quickly cover the Middle East and Africa. Middle East first.
Middle East is around 2% of global revenue. Market size projected at about $18 million for 2025, growing at 3.5%.
Key players there, Saudi Arabia, UAE.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia is the largest, about $6.4 million, growing at 3.8%. UAE is next, around $3.7 million, growing at 4.0%.
And the reasons, industrialization.
Yep, rapid industrialization drives energy demand. They also have a big supply of end-of-life tires from increasing vehicle use. And, like elsewhere, environmental regulations are starting to bite.
Okay, and finally Africa.
Africa is the smallest market currently, around 1% of global revenue. Projected size is just under $10 million, $9.93 million for 2025.
And the growth is slower there.
Yeah, the projected CGR is more modest, about 1.3%. South Africa is the largest market, around $3.5 million, with 2.2% growth. Nigeria is much smaller.
What's holding it back, or alternatively, what are the drivers, however small?
Well, the drivers are similar: growing waste challenges, the need for energy alternatives, increasing environmental awareness. Supportive government policies are emerging in some places too, but the infrastructure challenges are likely greater there.
Okay, that's a great tour of the world for TDF. Now, the report also talks about the type of TDF, doesn't it? Shredded versus whole tires.
It does. Two main types. Shredded tires seem to be the dominant form right now.
Why is that? Easier to use.
Mostly, yeah. They offer high energy content. Their uniform size helps with efficient burning, especially in things like cement kilns. And they're just easier to handle and transport in process form. Plus, government recycling initiatives often favor shredding.
But whole tires are growing faster, the report says.
That's the interesting bit, yes. Whole tires are the fastest growing segment.
Because they're cheaper, less processing.
Exactly. It's cost effectiveness. You skip a major processing step, which cuts down costs significantly. They still have a high calorific value, and for certain applications, like some cement kilns or specific industrial boilers, they work just fine with minimal prep.
Makes sense from a cost perspective. Okay, so where's all this TDF actually going? Who are the main end users?
The biggest end user, by far, is cement manufacturing.
Why cement kilns specifically?
Their kilns run at incredibly high temperatures, which are perfect for burning shredded tires efficiently and completely. It's a cost-effective substitute for coal, and often helps them meet emission targets too.
Right. Any other big users?
Utility boilers are another major segment, and it's growing rapidly.
So power plants, basically.
Yeah, power generation facilities. They're increasingly looking at TDF as an alternative to coal, again, for cost savings and environmental reasons, helping them meet stricter regulations.
Okay. And the report mentions pulp and paper mills, too.
Yes, pulp and paper mills, and then a category of others, basically various other industries with high energy needs are also starting to use TDF.
So if we step back and look at the market dynamics, what are the big forces pushing it forward?
Well, we've touched on them, but to summarize, definitely the increasing use of alternative fuels in those big industries, cement, power, paper. Then there's the pressure from environmental regulations, pushing for better waste management and lower emissions,
And cost.
and definitely rising energy costs. That makes a high energy, potentially cheaper fuel like TDF look very attractive.
But it can't all be positive, right? What are the main challenges or restraints holding it back?
No, there are definitely hurdles. The report points to the processing costs. Collecting, transporting, and shredding tires isn't cheap. Logistics can be complex, getting the tires from where they're discarded to where they can be used.
And environmental concerns about burning tires, even as fuel.
Yes, exactly. While it's generally better than landfilling or uncontrolled burning, there are still emissions concerns from combustion that need careful management. You need the right technology and adherence to regulations to minimize air pollution.
Okay. And what about key trends shaping the future? What should we watch for?
Well, the clear trend is just more adoption, especially in cement kilns and industrial boilers. That seems set to continue. And also, the increasing focus on regulations and waste management is driving more investment into the whole tire recycling infrastructure.
It sounds like a pretty active market, competitively speaking.
No, definitely. The report calls it highly competitive. You've got companies focused on making their collection and processing super efficient, getting the fuel to users reliably.
And government policies kind of fuel that competition.
They do, yeah. Policies promoting waste to energy definitely stir the pot.
Hmm.
We're also seeing strategic partnerships forming. Companies investing in better tech for shredding or optimizing the fuel itself, and a big push on sustainability messaging.
Any recent examples of that activity?
Yeah, a couple mentioned are pretty interesting. Just this May 2024, BP signed a big long-term deal, 8 years, with a company called CircTech.
BP, the energy giant.
That's right. They're agreeing to buy renewable marine fuel and something called circular naphtha, both derived from waste tires by CircTech. That points towards maybe higher value uses beyond just basic fuel.
Interesting. Any others?
And back in March 2023, Liberty Tire Recycling, a huge player in North America, partnered with Bridgestone Americas.
The tire manufacturer.
Yep, they're planning a big new recycling plant in Arizona, aiming to process millions of tires a year. It shows a commitment from within the tire industry itself towards a more circular model.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
If you had to boil it down for our listeners, what are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into the TDF market?
I'd say, first, remember the significant steady global growth projected to keep going.
Mhm.
Second, watch APAC. It's the largest market already by 2025 projections and growing the fastest, especially India. Third, understand the regional differences driven by regulations and energy needs. Fourth, know the main type shredded dominates now, but whole tires are growing fast due to cost. And fifth, the key users are cement and utility boilers, driven by cost, energy needs, and environmental pressures.
And it all ties back to that connection between waste management and sustainable energy.
Absolutely. That's the core story here. TDF is sitting right at the intersection of solving a waste problem and providing an alternative energy source.
It really is a fascinating example of finding value where we didn't used to see it, turning a problem into, well, fuel.
Precisely. This deep dive really highlights how something as common as an old tire is becoming a surprisingly important piece of the global energy puzzle.
So here's something to think about as we wrap up. With all these environmental pressures and the constant search for alternative fuels, what other innovations or maybe even new technologies might pop up to revolutionize this TDF industry even further in the next few years? And maybe, what role could you or your own industry play in that evolution?
Definitely food for thought.